Part 1. Legendary Beginnings, from Dangun to the Three Kingdoms. On a solitary land amidst seas and mountains, a legend was born. The son of heaven and a bear founded a nation. This was the beginning of Korea. Dangun, the mythical genesis of the Korean people. When discussing the origins of the Korean people, one cannot overlook the legend of Dangun, the most sacred symbol in the collective memory of the Korean peninsula. This tale is more than just mythology. It represents the symbolic overture of an ancient civilization. According to ancient Korean texts, such as the Samguk Yusa and the Dongguk Tongam, in 2333 BCE, a heavenly being named Hwanung, the son of Hwanin, Lord of Heaven, descended to the earthly realm to govern humanity. Accompanied by 3,000 followers from the heavenly kingdom, he came down to Mount Taebaek, believed today to be Mount Baekdu, where he founded the City of the Gods, teaching law, agriculture, medicine, and culture to the people. A bear and a tiger pleaded with Hwanung to transform them into humans. He agreed, but issued a test. They had to remain in a cave for 100 days, eating only garlic and mugwort, and avoiding sunlight. The tiger gave up, but the bear endured. After 21 days, transformed into a woman. She later married Hwanung and gave birth to Dangun Wanggeom, the founder of Joseon, the first Korean kingdom. This myth embodies not only a divine origin story, but also deep national sentiment. A people born not from conquest, but from patience, sacrifice, and the sacred energy of heaven and earth. Second, Joseon, the first state on the Korean peninsula. Joseon is not just legend. Archaeological evidence from the Bronze Age across the peninsula indicates the presence of a proto-state from as early as the 3rd millennium BCE. Joseon's initial center is believed to have been located in modern-day Liaoning, now part of China, and northern Korea. Chinese historical records, such as Sima Qian's Records of the Grand Historian, Shuiji, and the Book of Han, mention Joseon as a significant political entity. Under the reign of Wei Man, a refugee from the Zhou dynasty who seized the throne from Dangun's descendants, Joseon underwent military expansion and administrative reforms. However, this growth eventually led to direct conflict with the Han dynasty. The protracted war between Joseon and Han culminated in the kingdom's fall in 108 BCE. The Han dynasty subsequently established 4 commanderies, Lelang, Xuantu, Lintun, and Zhenfan, to directly govern the region. Third, the age of tribal states and the rise of successor kingdoms. Following Joseon's fall, a period of political fragmentation ensued. Tribes like Goryeo, Okjeo, Dongye, and the Samhan confederacies rose across the peninsula. Among these, 3 emerged as dominant forces and laid the groundwork for the Three Kingdoms era. Goryeo, founded in 37 BCE by Jumong, another legendary figure known for his divine bow and noble ideals. Initially a tribal confederation in the northeast, Goryeo rapidly expanded and became the most powerful military kingdom. Baekje, established in 18 BCE in the southwest by Onjo, Jumong's son. Baekje thrived through maritime trade and strong ties with China and Japan. Silla, founded in 57 BCE in the southeast, originating from the Jinhan Confederacy. Initially weaker militarily, Silla was shrewd in diplomacy and internal consolidation. Fourth, 3 kingdoms, 1 peninsula, 3 imperial dreams. From the 1st century CE onward, these 3 kingdoms began a fierce struggle for control of the Korean peninsula. Each had unique strengths. Goryeo, militarily dominant, repelled Han and Wei invasions, and defended vast territories extending into Manchuria. Baekje, a cultural and commercial hub with deep connections to Japan, instrumental in transmitting Buddhism and architectural techniques. Silla. Though initially weaker, Silla adeptly formed alliances and steadily expanded influence. The wars between these kingdoms were not just territorial, but also battles of culture, diplomacy, and national identity. V. Historical climax: the Empire of Goryeo and the Shadow of Tang. By the 6th century, Goryeo reached its zenith under King Gwanggaeto the Great. He expanded the kingdom into Manchuria, defeated Baekje, and even repelled invasions from the Sui and later the Tang dynasties. Yet such strength attracted danger. The Tang dynasty began forming an alliance with Silla to eliminate the overmighty Goryeo. The shadow of a total war loomed over the land. Meanwhile, Silla quietly reformed its military and administration, drawing closer to Tang and preparing for a historic conquest. Next part, Blood and Ambition, from the Three Kingdoms to Goryeo, will delve into an era of relentless wars, legendary battles, and the first unification of the peninsula. A brutal power game soaked in blood, yet filled with political brilliance, where the weakest kingdom may change the fate of a nation. Part 2. Blood and Ambition, from the Three Kingdoms to Goryeo. One peninsula, three powers, one dream of unification. But the one who claimed it all wasn't the strongest. It was the one who knew how to wait. I. The Three Kingdoms Wars. Three powers, three paths. From the 4th century onward, the Korean peninsula was divided by three ambitious and powerful kingdoms: Goryeo, Baekje, and Silla. Their struggle lasted over 400 years, characterized not only by military clashes, but also by fierce competition in culture, ideology, and political strategy. Goryeo, under King Gwanggaeto and his son Jiangsu, became a military empire in its own right. They repeatedly repelled invasions from the Sui and Tang dynasties, expanding their territory as far as the Liao River and dominating Northeast Asia. Baekje, strategically located along the southwestern coast, flourished as a trade hub with Japan, China, and Southeast Asia, spreading Buddhism and Korean civilization abroad. Meanwhile, Silla, the smallest of the three, quietly built internal strength, allied with the Tang dynasty, reformed its administration, and pursued a long-term strategy for unification. Second Silla, alliance with the dragon and a fiery unification. By the late 7th century, Silla took a bold step by forming a strategic alliance with the Tang dynasty, then the most powerful empire in Asia. In 660, the Silla-Tang alliance defeated Baekje. By 668, they crushed Goryeo. For the first time in history, nearly the entire Korean peninsula was unified under a single rule, known as Unified Silla. However, Silla soon discovered Tang's hidden agenda as the Chinese established military governance over the former territories of Goryeo and Baekje. A resistance movement erupted, and Silla managed to expel Tang forces from the peninsula, securing its sovereignty and territorial control. The Kingdom of Bale, Goguryeo's lingering legacy. Not all of Goguryeo's territory was annexed by Silla. In Manchuria, a former Goryeo general named Dai Joyong established a new state, Balhae, 698-926. Balhae carried the spirit of Goryeo, expanding as far as the Amur River, engaging in active trade with Japan and the Tang dynasty, and developing a unique culture, blending Mo tribal influences with Korean heritage. However, isolated from Silla and caught in the rising tide of regional power shifts, Balhae was eventually conquered by the Khitan Liao dynasty in the early 10th century. It became a forgotten piece in mainstream Korean historical narratives. The fourth, the decline of Silla, corruption, uprisings, and the end of an era. After its golden age, Silla fell into decline. Aristocratic corruption surged, peasants were oppressed, and the economy collapsed. Peasant revolts erupted across the land. Among the most notable were the uprisings led by Gyeonhwan, a former Silla general who established later Baekje, and Gung Ye, a Buddhist monk who founded later Goryeo, later renamed Taebong. Ultimately, a local nobleman named Wang Geon overthrew Gung Ye and founded a new dynasty, Goryeo. V. Goryeo, the Second Unification and the Mongol Challenge. In 936, Goryeo achieved full unification of the peninsula, ending the later Three Kingdoms period. The Goryeo dynasty, 918 to 1392, began with relatively inclusive policies, integrating regional nobles, maintaining Buddhist traditions, and reforming taxes and administration. Goryeo became a cultural beacon. Woodblock printing, the creation of the Tripitaka Koreana, advancements in calligraphy, and Buddhist arts flourished. However, it also fell prey to internal factionalism, power struggles, and rampant corruption. In the 13th century, the Mongol Empire launched devastating invasions against Goryeo. After years of war and defeat, Goryeo was forced to submit to the Yuan dynasty. Despite this, the kingdom maintained relative autonomy, becoming a vassal state while preserving its cultural identity and internal governance. Sixth, the decline of Goryeo, prelude to a dynastic shift. By the late 14th century, with the Yuan dynasty collapsing, Goryeo lost its external support and descended into chaos. Bureaucratic infighting and widespread peasant revolts plagued the state. A brilliant general named Yi Seong-gae, sent to repel Japanese pirates, turned his army around and overthrew the Goryeo court. In 1392, he established a new dynasty, Joseon. Next part. The Joseon dynasty, glory, conservatism, and the invasions of the century will lead us into a 500-year era marked by cultural brilliance, deadly rigidity, and foreign invasions that would forever shape Korea's destiny. Part 3. The Joseon dynasty, glory, conservatism, and the invasions of the century. A dynasty that lasted over 500 years, born in revolution, crowned by culture, and eroded by rigidity and war. 1. The founding of Joseon, Revolution and Reformation. In 1392, General Yi Seong-gae seized power and proclaimed the Joseon dynasty, ending Goryeo's 474-year rule. Yi, who took the throne as King Taijo, moved the capital to Hanyang, modern-day Seoul, and laid the foundation for a centralized Confucian state. The early Joseon rulers sought to break from Goryeo's Buddhist dominance. Confucianism was elevated to the status of state ideology, which shaped the legal system, education, and administration. The dynasty implemented the civil service examination system based on Confucian texts, leading to a meritocratic bureaucracy, though still dominated by the Yangban aristocracy. Second, cultural renaissance, Hangul, and scientific flourishing. The Joseon dynasty witnessed one of Korea's most remarkable cultural and intellectual renaissances. In the 15th century, under King Sejong the Great, or 1418 to 1450, Joseon saw innovations in science, music, agriculture, astronomy, and literature. Most notably, King Sejong created Hangul, the Korean phonetic alphabet, in 1443. Prior to this, literacy was restricted to the elite who could read classical Chinese. Hangul democratized literacy, enabling broader participation in cultural and political life. Joseon scholars also developed sophisticated water clocks, rain gauges, celestial globes, and calendars. The Zhang Yongxil inventions epitomized the court's drive to blend scientific inquiry with practical governance. Third foreign threats: the Imjin War, 1592 to 1598. Despite internal stability, Joseon was not immune to external threats. In 1592, Toyotomi Hideyoshi of Japan launched a massive invasion of Korea, aiming to conquer the Ming dynasty through the peninsula. The resulting Imjin War was catastrophic. Japanese forces advanced rapidly, capturing Seoul and Pyongyang. However, Admiral Yi Sun-sin turned the tide with his legendary naval victories using innovative turtle ships, geopolitics. His defense of Korea's southern coast disrupted Japanese supply lines and became a symbol of Korean resistance. The war ended in 1598, following Hideyoshi's death, with enormous casualties and devastation across the peninsula. Joseon emerged, weakened but defiant, clinging to its Confucian ideals. The Manchu invasions and political stagnation. Barely recovered from the Japanese invasions, Joseon faced new threats from the north. The rising Manchu, later Qing dynasty, invaded Korea twice, in 1627 and 1636. Joseon was forced into a humiliating tributary relationship, but maintained internal autonomy. These invasions further entrenched Joseon's conservatism. Traumatized by war, the court turned inward. Reformists were marginalized, factionalism deepened, and the dynasty hardened its neo-Confucian orthodoxy. This led to increasing social rigidity, with class mobility nearly frozen. Internal strife, peasant rebellions, and factional wars. From the 17th to the 19th century, Joseon became mired in internal decay. Political factions, Noron, Soron, Namen, and Gyeonggyeon, fought bitterly for dominance. While scholarly, their battles often descended into purges, exiles, and assassinations. Meanwhile, the peasantry suffered. Taxes were high, land was concentrated in aristocratic hands, and corruption flourished. Peasant rebellions broke out frequently, notably the Hongyeongnai Rebellion, 1811 to 1812, challenging the court's legitimacy. The court remained aloof, clinging to tradition and resisting calls for reform, even as Western powers loomed on the horizon. Sixth, encounters with the West, isolation and the Catholic question. Starting in the 18th century, Western influence began seeping into Korea through Catholic missionaries and books smuggled from China. Catholicism spread among commoners, and some Yangban, offering spiritual equality and social critique of Confucian hierarchy. This alarmed the court. Joseon launched anti-Catholic persecutions, viewing the religion as heretical and subversive. The 1801 and 1839 purges executed hundreds, including French and Korean Catholics. Yet, Christianity continued to spread underground. By the mid-19th century, Joseon earned the nickname the Hermit Kingdom for its staunch isolationism. But isolation could no longer shield it from global geopolitics. 7. The fall begins: foreign encroachment and internal collapse. As imperial powers scrambled for influence in East Asia, Korea's strategic location made it a target. The Gangwon incident in 1875, where a Japanese gunboat forced open Korean ports, signaled the beginning of foreign domination. Under pressure, Joseon signed unequal treaties with Japan, the U.S., and European powers. Internal reformers and conservatives clashed. The Gabo reforms of the 1890s aimed to modernize Joseon, but they came too late and were met with fierce resistance. In 1897, King Gojong proclaimed the Korean Empire, attempting to sever tributary ties to China and assert independence. but it was a final gasp. Too little, too late. Next part. From Empire to Division, the story of a split. Korea will unveil the tragic fall into colonization, the fierce struggles for independence, and the geopolitical chessboard that led to a nation split in two. A story still unfinished. Part 4. From Empire to Division, the story of a split Korea. One people, one language, one history, yet divided by a line drawn by foreign powers. This is the unfinished tragedy of Korea. 1. The Korean Empire, a dynasty's final stand. In 1897, King Gojong declared the founding of the Korean Empire, aiming to sever tributary ties to China and assert sovereignty while initiating modernization. However, the country was in crisis. Political instability, economic collapse, and aggressive interference from foreign powers like Russia, Japan, the US, and China. The Gwangmu reforms were launched, but lacked domestic unity and were hindered by external manipulation. The Joseon dynasty, now styled as the Korean Empire, had become a pawn in a global chess game. Second Japanese annexation. 35 years of harsh colonial rule. Following Japan's victory over Russia in 1905, it gained full control over Korea. In 1910, under coercion, the Japan-Korea Annexation Treaty was signed, initiating 35 years of harsh colonial rule. Japan exploited Korea's resources, displaced farmers, and imposed forced labor. Korean language and culture were suppressed, schools taught Japanese, and citizens were forced to adopt Japanese names. Resistance surged nationwide, most notably in the March 1st movement of 1919, where millions protested for independence. Though brutally suppressed, it ignited a long-term liberation movement. Third, the independence movement and provisional government. Following the March 1st uprising, the independence movement went global. In 1919, the Provisional Government of Korea was established in Shanghai, led by figures such as Syngman Rhee and Kim Koo. Within Korea, guerrilla units and anti-Japanese resistance groups operated along the Chinese and Manchurian borders, aligning with international communist movements. The Korean Communist Party, founded in 1925, played a significant role in armed resistance. Fourth World War II, liberation and the seeds of division. As Japan joined the Axis powers in World War II, Korea became a key supply base. Hundreds of thousands of Koreans were subjected to forced labor, and women were coerced into becoming comfort women. When Japan surrendered in 1945, joy was short-lived. The Korean peninsula was divided along the 38th parallel, a temporary arrangement by the US and the Soviet Union that would have lasting consequences. V. Two Koreas, two systems. Official partition of the peninsula. In the north, the Soviet Union supported the establishment of a communist regime under Kim Il-sung. In the south, the US helped form a capitalist government led by Syngman Rhee. In 1948, two states were officially established: the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, and the Republic of Korea, South Korea. Both claimed to be the sole legitimate government of the entire peninsula. Sixth, the Korean War, a fratricidal conflict. In 1950, North Korea launched a surprise attack on the South, triggering a devastating 3-year war. Over 3 million people died, and neither side achieved unification. The 1953 Armistice Agreement ended active combat, but did not result in a peace treaty. The Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, at the 38th parallel, became a chilling symbol of division. 7. Two diverging paths, North Korea and South Korea. After the war, the two Koreas developed in starkly different directions. North Korea, built a hereditary dictatorship under the ideology of Juche, self-reliance, isolated and focused on nuclear development. South Korea transitioned from military dictatorship to democracy in 1987, experienced rapid economic growth, and emerged as a cultural and technological powerhouse. 8th, struggles for reunification, hopes deferred. Despite numerous summits, peace declarations, and symbolic acts, e.g., joint Olympic teams in 2000 and 2018, Korea remains divided. North Korea continues missile tests, while South Korea navigates a complex diplomatic landscape with the US, China, and Japan. The ideological conflict, nuclear tension, and political differences make reunification seem distant. Yet in the hearts of many Koreans, the dream of a united homeland endures. An open ending. Korea, one nation, two fates, and an unanswered question. Will the wound of division ever heal?